SuperTalk Mississippi media production.
Join the growing crowd at Mid-Delta Online Auction. Download their app by searching Mid-Delta Auction to bid on tractors, trailers, heavy equipment, golf carts, and more. Download the app today or call Will Jeffcoat at 662-299-2414 for more details for the first Tuesday of every month auction in Greenwood.
MidDays with Gerard Gibert is on the air. MidDays with Gerard Gibert is powered by C-Spire. Power your home or business with C-Spire Fiber. To learn more, visit supertalk.fm/C-Spire. C-Spire Fiber powers SuperTalk Mississippi. Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. You're listening to MidDays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to MidDays, SuperTalk Mississippi. I'm your host, Gerard Gibert, along with Rhino in the Element Wealth Studio, guiding you through the middle of your day with facts, fodder, and fine music. Morning there, Rhino.
Howdy, howdy.
Man, it feels almost fall-like out there today. A little cold front, unusually dipped into the deep south over the weekend, triggered some rain where I was, up at Old Waverly, the Columbus Golden Triangle area, but nary a drop around here in central Mississippi, right?
There was a little bit, but not as much as you experienced in North Mississippi. But
4 inches we got in 2 days.
There was a bit of rain, just not a whole heck of a lot, and it was spotty in places. But, yesterday was nice.
Yeah. Well, today it's
today will be kind of nice, but not nearly as nice as yesterday was.
Well, certainly this morning.
Oh yeah,
low humidity, which you got to appreciate that in August. That's typically the most humid, or certainly the first half of September, the most humid months of the year. But it is the deep south, and we are there in the great state of Mississippi. We're all buckled up, ready to go as usual in the Element Wealth Studio today. In the next segment, it's Dr. Craig Orgeron, the Executive Director of the Mississippi Department of Information Technology Services. It also serves as Mississippi's Chief Information Officer. We had last week on the program, we had Colin Napier, Dr. Napier, from the Mississippi Artificial Intelligence Network. He shared his thoughts on the progress of adoption of artificial intelligence here in the state of Mississippi and the work the AI task force has been doing. And Dr. Orgeron, also a member of that task force, we'll get his take on how the Department of Information Technology Services, which he, of course, directs, is assisting agencies in their implementation and use of AI. So, and other technologies as well, of course. So it should be fun. And speaking of which, Rhino, today after the bell, another earnings report coming in from Palantir. That is a fascinating company, by the way, if you guys haven't looked into that. And it's kind of hard to describe what exactly it is they do. But they build software that analyzes a bunch of data. It's probably the easiest way to describe it. Data analytics, kind of what the practice area is described as. Founded by Peter Thiel in 2003, trades under the ticker PLTR. Thiel, of course, involved in a number of technology startups. But it uses data to help big businesses run factories, supply chains. Government is a big user of Palantir's tools. They work with defense and covert groups, our military, our law enforcement, our intelligence agencies. Using artificial intelligence, of course, Palantir Technologies. Hard to believe they've been around since 2003, but they're scheduled to report after the bell today. And Investopedia always does a good job whenever there are high-profile companies reporting early in the day, which would be this morning. They always publish a report that says, here's how much you can expect the stock to move after their earnings reports. And they do that by looking at the options traders. You got folks who are buying options to sell, and that would be put options, and options to buy, that would be call options, and they do a bunch of analysis, maybe using Palantir, Rhino, and certainly artificial intelligence, to predict, if you will, and project how much a stock may move after they report. So based on all the options that are outstanding and the activity there, their shares are seen moving up or down by 10% by the end of the week based on results. So from Friday's close, that could mean shares go back over $135 or they slip below $111. That's the 10% in either direction. So Palantir is up today. The president says he halted strikes on Iran. This broke late yesterday because of peace deal. He says perimeters are in place. I think he misspelled. I'm not sure if he meant to say perimeter or parameter, but nonetheless, he said that it looks like we may have a deal. Now, Iran, to the extent you can trust Iran, you've seen that, Rhino? No, we're not talking whatsoever. And the president, I believe, had said we were about to unleash an attack that rivals war in World War II. He announced a potential deal to end the conflict, which includes reopening the strait. Now, the Iranian leaders say, yeah, we're thinking about reopening the strait, but it ain't going to be exactly like you guys wanted it. I'm paraphrasing it a bit. And it got a bit over my head, Rhino. Well, we're going to have this route and that route, but not this route and that route. It's like they're sort of parsing out this body of water of where ship traffic will be allowed to flow. Now, this is something that I found fascinating. I caught an interview with the CEO of Chevron this morning on the Business Channel, real early. I think his last name is Worth. Hank Worth? I can't remember his first name. But the CEO, and he said that there's still concerns, even... Mike Worth, thank you. Once we get past this situation in Iran and hopefully shipping in the Strait of oil returns to its normal status, he says don't expect it to go back to pre-war volumes. Also said that there are other problems across the world with Ukraine and Russia trading strikes back and forth, specifically targeting oil and gas production. And that affects the global supply of the commodity. And he's concerned that we're looking at continued high levels of pricing of oil as a result. And now, I get it. His company makes money by selling oil, and when the price is elevated, his company does better. And it is unusual from many industries, just like agriculture, in that the market sets the price. Sellers don't set the price. The combination of buyers and sellers in the marketplace determine the price. The market price reacts to supply and demand. And he talked about that and was concerned also about the depletion of our strategic petroleum reserve, which is, I believe, at its lowest level now since 1983. So that's a concern. Of course, the Biden administration released oil to try to drive the price down when everybody was mad. And the Trump administration has done the same to counteract the loss of the oil that's flowing through the strait. But we're at dangerously low levels in the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. Literally, it becomes a national security concern. That's the purpose of that oil stored away on reserve, that if for some reason the flow of oil were significantly disrupted because of war, we got to power and fuel our military to secure and protect the nation, and that's a concern. The CEO also said, Rhino, that the damage being done to the various oil and gas infrastructure, that in some cases, like he said, tanks, for example, yeah, we can fix and repair those in a fairly short period of time, but there's some infrastructure that would take months, if not years, to repair and replace, and that, of course, has an impact on supply. So interesting dynamics going. Now, the markets like this news out of the White House today. They like it, and the Dow is up significantly, 540 points at this moment. The NASDAQ also up over 400. Crude oil down $5.21. It's just like a same story every day. We all pay attention to what the president says about the status of negotiations with Iran. Markets, oil, and stock markets react accordingly. Coming right back with Craig Orgeron.
Now back to Middays with Gerard here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Well Studio. We are pleased to welcome now Dr. Craig Orgeron, the Executive Director of the Mississippi Department of Information Technology Services, also serves as Mississippi's Chief Information Officer, the acronym CIO, of course, for that. Mm-hmm. Craig, good to see you. Thanks for coming in. Yeah.
Pleasure.
So I wanted to get you in. We talked to Colin, our good friend, Colin Napier, that runs the Mississippi Artificial Intelligence Network, is now the Chief Artificial Intelligence Officer of that organization. I think that's well-deserved. He's done a fabulous job at that. We all serve on this AI task force together. And we've had a number of meetings. We've talked to lots of subject matter experts as well. And the goal, of course, is to figure out how can we more effectively leverage this technology in our state, in both the public and private sector, and what sort of guardrails and potential regulations should we implement. But serving as the state's CIO, and I'll kind of start it off here, is that you're responsible for establishing standards that agencies then use in their implementation of IT solutions. But AI has really kept you guys busy, right? So you've had to think differently about those standards, and we've got several agencies that are putting to the test lots of use cases, and some that maybe haven't embraced it just yet. Where do we stand on all that?
Well, I tell you, we've had a lot of luck, and Colin has been a great partner at Maine. Our innovation hub is a partnership between ITS, Maine, and AWS, right? Okay. And it's a sandbox kind of model, and it lets students at our universities develop use cases with agencies. So we're kind of both tackling best-of-breed use cases and workforce development at the same time. But I tell you, you pose that other question, and just in the last couple of weeks, you know, it's dizzying the things that have occurred. So an open letter on, you know, open source versus not, another open letter on this PACE concept of how these models are getting developed. So, I mean, it's really a weekly occurrence of grappling with where all this is going and how to do the most right thing, I think, to keep innovation top of mind.
Yeah, and that's something that, of course, the agencies grapple with as well. They don't necessarily have all that expertise on staff, and nobody really does. And so you have to rely to a great extent on external resources to help navigate that complex world, and it's coming at us like a fire hose.
Oh, yes. Yeah. More so than ever in terms of the partnerships that a state government needs, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And I think this is eclipsing the speed with which it's occurring, that learning gap that is just out there, and I think Colin and his team have done a remarkable job in attempting to close that. It is significant. This is, you and I have talked about this. These are just sort of generational paradigm shifts in technology.
Yeah.
And we are in the middle of one now. There can be a lot of anxiety that bubbles up, as you grapple with this. A lot of the workforce conversations that are happening. A lot of just look, I mean, was it just a few months ago when cybersecurity became top of mind with these models? Mythos is released. You have it spurs a lot of really good conversation. And in the open and closed piece, I was thinking about and looking at some stuff over the weekend on this pacing issue, which was an open letter by engineers, which I really think is tapping the brakes on this sort of recursive self-improvement, this RSI that they're calling it. In essence, models getting good enough to improve other models, right? And then that speed of innovation that's really happening at scale.
Well, it is interesting that you've got engineers that work for these companies developing the technology that they're sounding the alarm a bit. I wouldn't say it's a 5-alarm fire or anything like that, but they're cautioning. Yeah, it's interesting. I
heard one comment about code. I think you've made this point before about how these things work. So there was a comment about the code, the issues with code, right, and these models finding it. So, the OpenAI situation with Hugging Face, right?
Yeah.
The whole concept of sort of daisy chaining these, zero-day threads together in and of itself we haven't quite seen. But one of the comments over the weekend I heard was that what we're going to see is that as AI helps us write better code, finding gaps in the code is going to be harder.
Yeah.
Right? So that sort of, it's not quite tit for tat, but sort of, this innovation equilibrium is always mildly imbalanced, and it sort of rebalances and moves forward and rebalances and moves forward. And I thought that was a really compelling point with all the hand-wringing that can go on with it.
No, that makes total sense, but it doesn't replace the human creative aspect 100%. Of creating software applications.
Agreed.
And I think that's what's missing. We used to have kind of a hard line between analysts who design systems and work with user requirements and then turn that into a system design, and then the developers who would take the design and just turn it into code. And so, it could mean that we need fewer developers, but I contend that you can't get that perfect. I mean, you still got to have developers to dig into that code and make the adjustments and enhancements as necessary.
100%.
So I think that's a bit grossly overblown to think that you could sit down and just prompt one of these generational tools, AI generational tools, to create and replicate a Salesforce.com. That's a massive piece of software.
That's right.
That's just not going to happen.
Right. Well, I think the intelligence really on the human side is still in the orchestration of, even if it's agents helping you do this, it's the orchestration of those agents to get to a product that you want.
Yeah.
I mean, I think at the end of it.
Well, eliminating the drudgery aspect of that and the debugging, I mean, the amount of time we spend, to your point.
Sure.
Sure, that makes sense. That just means we can create more of it, is what I see.
100%.
We have more capacity to create more, and because we have more capacity, we dream up new applications.
I think, too, this other there's a lot of this kind of conversation around that. And I think this time that we're in, you're going to see this spillover of innovation, right? So, we can kind of talk about data centers. We talk about power and cooling. I think you're going to see incredible amounts of innovation in smaller chips that, the cooling coefficients that are needed are different. And that's what pushes us forward.
Yeah.
Right? And I think sometimes you need that other piece of it, for the industry to say we're going here, it's like a moonshot, and we're going to get there, right? And that innovation sort of zigzags its way through all of those things getting better over time.
But that's been the cycle we've witnessed in the industry from its infancy, from its beginnings. We dream, for example, wasn't too long ago of migrating and transitioning from mechanical storage to electronic storage. And it was always a matter of, we could do it, but it's just too expensive. But now that's common as an example. So when's the last time you heard about a hard disk failure? Well, you don't, because there are no hard disks anymore.
One of the old school things we talk about, Moore's Law, from the mid-'60s, Professor Moore. Like, so the doubling of what you could put on a piece of silicon every 18 months or so. And, there's been times where we're thinking, I think we're getting close to it. Now you're just seeing this thing sort of hockey stick again.
Yeah.
Over the weekend, I was listening to a couple of podcasts, and they were kind of talking about these things are now in sort of 3 and 6 month increments that you're kind of seeing these jumps forward. And that in and of itself is just stunning.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to reap benefits that are really hard to kind of quantify in terms of where we're going.
But that's always been the benefit of innovation is shrinking cycle times. The time from an idea in the head to production of a finished product, whatever, or service, whatever that is. Because of all this technology, we're able to shrink the cycle time. That makes us more productive. That translates to more creation of wealth and economic activity.
But the thing we use the internet too sometimes to kind of talk about these things, and there's a couple of corollaries to Moore's Law. I think one of them is Metcalfe's Law. It's sort of this, this exponential kind of nodal thing. The number of nodes on a network, makes these innovations exponential. So everybody is stunned by the speed with which AI has been developed. But I think that's on the heels of 20 or 30 years of bandwidth becoming ubiquitous. Right? We all have it now. So the speed with which you can get to scale is so much different than it ever had been, from an innovation perspective.
We got a break. Can you hang around?
Yeah, we bet.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Good. We'll talk some more with Dr. Craig Orgeron. He's in the Element Well studio. He's Mississippi's Chief Information Officer. Stay with us.
You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert, here on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
All that you touch and all that you see, all that you taste, all you feel, and all that you love, and all that you hate, all you distrust, all you save, and all that you give, and all that you deal, and all that you buy, big, borrow, or steal, and all you create, and all you destroy.
We're back with you in the Element Well studio. We're visiting with Dr. Craig Orgeron. He's the state's Chief Information Officer, also the Executive Director of the Mississippi Department of Information Technology Services. Explain to the folks, Craig, because they don't really maybe hear a lot about ITS. When you think about all the agencies in the state, ITS isn't one that's in the news all the time, for example. That's a good thing, right? But it's a support organization that is central to the entire state government. Talk about that.
So the model in Mississippi is one that we call it's federated. So our agencies are the experts at what their business is, right? Whether it's building bridges or keeping water safe or taking care of kids, our agencies lead that. I think our job is to really be candid is pretty straightforward. We want to build things that people can share. And we want to be part of building things that people can share, whether it's cybersecurity solutions, AI solutions, networking solutions. The world we live in, though, to your point, is so interconnected, right? And these tools and these pieces and parts are so part of every single thing we do every day. I think the real calling card for state government is, let's get in a room and decide what it is that we need, and let's decide what it is that we want to share. So in the last couple of years, the legislature has been amazingly supportive.
Okay.
With a Cloud Center of Excellence bill.
Yeah.
Let's see if we can figure out how to do a lot of this cloud computing in a way that makes good sense. We actually have a data exchange bill. You and I were talking about data from last year that we've made progress on. So these initiatives are sort of kind of pushing the state forward. I think the boundary is that individual agencies know their business, and I think our job is to try to build solutions that are as shareable as possible.
Okay.
Right? Not just for scale, not just for delivering government better, but for the taxpayer, right?
Yeah.
We want to share these solutions, and I think the world we live in, it is way more possible to do that than in the past. We're not as encumbered by physical infrastructure, right? We used to run systems or solutions, and those had specific amounts of capacity limits. Well, now with software as a service or with software-defined networking or with the cloud, right, it's an accordion. You know, that can get bigger or smaller. I was having a conversation recently with some folks, and they were talking about, you know, what do we have in common versus what we don't? And it was interesting because the point I made was, you know, our big cloud providers, right? You know, Google, AWS, Microsoft Azure, their entire business is premised on sharing.
Yeah.
Right? When they build these giant data centers, they're putting all the things in them.
Yes.
Right? So Netflix in and of itself lives completely inside of, you know, data centers. So yes, we can share.
Yeah.
You know, yes, we can build solutions for the people of Mississippi. And I think the job is to come together and as I typically say, right, get in the canoe and paddle in the same direction.
Yeah.
And that's a folksy way of talking about what our mission is.
Okay. Well, as you know, the way the technology has evolved, it has all been about sharing these assets because in the old days, everything had to be dedicated. You had to have a dedicated email environment, for example, and an environment, server, storage, networking dedicated to your line of business software, as an example, and then other things. And what we found is that infrastructure was idle most of the time. Yes. It didn't work a whole lot except when you called on it. Yes. And so we said, well, how do we figure out a way to use all that idle capacity? And so technology evolved, virtualization primarily, and that's what triggered this data center revolution. We could stick all this stuff in these rooms and these buildings that are way more suited than down the hall in your agency. And by the way, you could all share this powerful infrastructure and this powerful connectivity that would be impractical or economically unviable in your physical location. And that's what led to all this.
So I think in addition to those two things in 25, an executive order on AI that our governor signed, this past session I think the legislature wanted to talk about cybersecurity. You know, are we together around the table on that?
Yeah.
And another bill that the legislature passed is a bill called optimization.
Okay.
Which really seeks, I think it is a handshake, right? I think the handshake is between ITS and the agencies to do what you and I have just been talking about.
Exactly.
Let's build these things that optimize these solutions, understanding that there's always going to be an anomaly. There's always going to be, this is a little bit different, right? But what if you land at 70, 30, 80, 20?
Yeah.
You know, if you're sharing 70 or 80% of these things and there's a 20 or 30%, you know, carve out, that's okay. You know, that's okay to move the state forward.
But you've always got the special circumstances.
Absolutely.
It's something that's unique to an agency that other agencies don't need. And so you accommodate that. But there's a ton of overlap as well.
100%.
Right? That could be optimized.
Yeah. So I'll tell you, one of the things I've learned is, sometimes in these transitions it can be challenging because, you're trying to make the best right decision and set a path forward. I really believe on several fronts we're at the beginning or the near beginning of doing technology different for Mississippi government. And so my whole motivation is to both be, as always, available to talk with anybody that needs to, but then to sort of try to hold the line as best I can on, doing this. Because as soon as that doesn't happen, you look up in 3 years or 5 years or 7 years or 10 years and you go, why on God's earth are we not doing it different? So I think what's really amazing about this period of time with artificial intelligence and these technologies we're dealing with is it really gives us a chance to envision a very different future and a very different way of getting things done for the citizens of Mississippi.
Yeah. And that's what the citizens want. They want efficiency. Mm-hmm. They want to strip extraneous costs out of agency operations and processing. And to the extent we can do that with technology, we should embrace that.
I would agree. Yeah, and that's the fun part. It's always the challenging part, but it's the fun part, right? And it's especially, I don't think, and you know this, I think, as well as anybody, you don't see too many of these in a career.
100% right.
But
so true.
You see just a few of them that are true game changers. And in the last couple of years, I think some of the legislation and the initiatives from our elected leaders have put us on a path to really get to a different place. And I think that's a very, very exciting place for us to be.
I agree. And you're right. There is a commitment within our legislature. I've talked to many of them, and I know you have as well, and they want to see this happen. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're supportive of it. They advocate for it, and I think that's good news for the agencies and the taxpayers.
100%.
There are ways again of improving efficiencies there, and that's top of everybody's mind when it comes to government. The private sector is motivated by the bottom line, obviously, but with respect to government, it's accountability to taxpayers.
Mm-hmm. So you asked me a question too about sort of AI and its use, and one of the thoughts I heard I've been thinking a lot about is this concept of value creation and value capture. This whole idea, especially in the private sector, right? How do you their minds are, right, how do I monetize something?
Yeah.
Right? How do I differentiate, grow market share?
Yeah.
Right? I think that's going to be really interesting to see how AI evolves, because I think now it's this thing that is, it's stunning. I think the technology is stunning. But really and truly, right, that question of where's the value in it, I think we're on that path, and it's pretty exciting to kind of be on that journey as this gets figured out.
Gotcha. Now, I know you pay attention to what's happening in other states. You have peers in other states as well. You guys are talking about this, huh?
Oh, absolutely. We were just last week, I was in Cincinnati, Ohio, with the other 49 states.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, it's time well spent.
Yeah, sure.
I get to, you get picked and you talk through a panel, and I got to stand up there for 20 minutes or so and kind of talk. I talked about my dear friend Colin Napier and what Maine is doing. But I tell you, you see where other states are going, and it's one of the, I think, the amazing things on the public sector side of the world is that sharing is considered good.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
And you will sit across from, I think the table I was at, I was with Nevada, Connecticut, 3 or 4 states, and you're just soaking it in. That
is by far the most valuable aspect of getting together in the same room with other people, is 100%. It not?
Yeah. It's 8 hours in a hotel room with no windows.
You can't. There's no substitute for that.
No.
Is everybody we learned that from COVID when we try to do these things via
live music and a charcuterie board demonstration. Gather with friends, savor exceptional wines, and experience an unforgettable summer evening in Ridgeland. Tickets are $50 per person. Don't miss the final event of the Summer Porch Party Series. Learn more at mscrafts.org/events classes.
Today, I'm going to start building that fence my neighbors have been hinting about for years.
Oh, hey, that's great. While you're at it, are you planning to dig up any utility lines?
That's not on my to-do list.
Then you need to call 811 first. Before you start a digging project, call 811 to have underground utility-owned lines marked. It's free, it's easy, and it beats accidentally turning your backyard project into a neighborhood event.
I'm calling 811 right now.
Brought to you by Atmos Energy, who remind you that August 11th is National 811 Day.
The one body shop that's always believed in using OEM parts and repairing vehicles to their original factory condition is Clinton Body Shop. Auto accidents are stressful, and the last thing you need is a repair that devalues your car and makes it unsafe. In a time when more than ever insurers are pushing consumers to body shops that work for them and not you, we want to remind you Clinton Body Shop believes you deserve to have your vehicle returned to its pre-accident condition. That's why we use OEM parts and OEM repair procedures. In fact, we're trained and certified by more automakers than any body shop in Mississippi. So remember, it's your right to choose where to get your repair. So choose Clinton Body Shop in Clinton or Richland. As our founder always said, we really do take pride in perfection. Go to ClintonBodyShop.com.
SuperTalk Agri-News Network, and here's your morning Ag Report. Pest management specialists are working to ensure that food makes it from the farm to your plate as safely as possible. Dr. Jose Santos Portugal with the Mississippi State University Extension Service explains.
It is a public health threat they deal with. I mean, you got to think about things like food production, warehousing facilities. Once the food leaves the farm until it gets into your plate, likely a pest management professional has protected it from infestation all along the line, from warehousing to production to the supermarket, all the way to your plate.
He says modern technology and advanced research have made it easier to deter pests without having to use chemicals.
A lot of times we don't need a chemical. A lot of times it's, well, we need to go ahead and clean up over here. We need to exclude them from this area. So it's a much more holistic approach.
Be sure to keep up with Agri-News in Mississippi by heading on over to supertalk.fm.
This is professional ball player Jake Mangum. Life is all about making choices. And one of the best choices you can make is joining the winning team at Farm Bureau. Now you can get affordable health care with the new Farm Bureau Health Plan. With statewide access to Blue Cross and Blue Shield's Blue Card PPO network. Get started by contacting your local agent to find a plan that works for you. It's time to go with the home team. It's time to go with Farm Bureau.
Thinking about that big home project? In Mississippi, the law requires a licensed contractor for residential projects, including new home construction over $50,000. Home remodeling or improvements, including roofing, over $10,000. All subcontractors performing residential, electrical, plumbing, or HVAC work on new home construction projects over $50,000 or home improvement projects over $10,000. Don't risk your investment. Visit msboc.us to verify a contractor's license today. A message from the Mississippi State Board of Contractors.
This is Brian Haydad with Sports Talk Mississippi, the Magnolia State's #1 sports show. Get the show wherever you get your podcast.
You're listening to Middays with Gerard here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. We are glad you're with us today. It's Monday. It's a short show at 12:05. It's Ricky Matthews, Super Talk Outdoors. Are you thinking about or planning for a retirement? Do you have a plan? Go to myelementwealth.com or call 601-957-6006 to let Element Wealth help you find your balance between income growth and guarantees. Our C Spire text line is always open, 601-879-4395. And before the day's out, Rhino's going to give away some tickets to Toto. They're coming to the Brandon Amphitheater on August the 5th. He'll have some tickets to give away. So we were talking, we appreciate Dr. Orgeron. Full disclosure, I've known Craig for many years, worked with him and his team as a vendor, as a partner to the state of Mississippi in the procurement and implementation of IT solutions across the public sector landscape. And I will say this, Rhino, that states have different approaches to oversight, if you will, standards creation for IT. And you need standards, but otherwise you end up with an unmanageable, unsupportable environment. So you have to be careful there. And they have different approaches to procurement of IT. And I will say that the state of Mississippi shines in that respect. Having done business with a number of states in my career in IT procurement and implementation, we got a pretty good thing going. The system that is in place that ITS oversees is pretty strong, and I would put it against any in the country. And I've dealt with them in the West, in the Northeast, here in the South, the Midwest. We do a pretty dang good job. So Craig and his team are top-notch, and they provide a valuable service to our agency landscape and a valuable service, as you heard Craig say, to our taxpayers as well. I think some of the laws that were passed really directing ITS and the agencies on how to navigate this complex world of IT, I think were good. I was asked opinion a couple of times on that, but our legislators, I think, have been diligent and have been committed to ensuring that Mississippi, the state of Mississippi's IT environment is world class, and we should be proud of that. It's a good thing. So, lots of stuff going on in the state, and of course, and across the country from a political perspective as well. One of the things that got my attention, Rhino, is that a number of states are looking at implementing 4-day school weeks. 4-day school weeks. What do you think about that? 4 days being, I don't know that there's any that are experimenting with it at this point, but it is something that is getting a lot of attention, and advocacy for that, interest in it, is going up. I think at least, is it Indiana maybe that I think is already implemented?
Yeah, they put a law on the books that went into effect July 1 that would require schools to meet new criteria before they can apply and be approved for the 4-day week waiver.
Okay. All right. So
apparently across the country there are over 2,000 schools in over half of the states that use the model of the 4-day school week to try to save money, attract staff, and limit problems.
Wow. I didn't know it was that many. So it's gaining traction. That's the point. And I'm looking at this story about Indiana. As I recall, it was a pilot program, right, 2 or 3 years ago that they implemented. And reading this report, the principal said, yeah, at first the transition was tough, that we had 4 longer school days, so you're not spending fewer hours in the classroom or at school, 4 longer days, Fridays off. This was a change they implemented under this pilot program. This was in Lafayette, Indiana. But they say that it's starting to work out. They like it now. And she says, yeah, there's a noticeable difference on Monday. Kids and teachers are rested. Everyone's excited to be here. How about that? The King bumping us out of this segment of Middays. Fox News, SuperTalk News coming your way. Then the second hour of this Monday's Middays. Stay with us. Coming right back.
Though it's always crowded, you still can find some room for broken-hearted lovers to cry. So, take a
so lonely, baby. Well, they're so lonely. They'll be so lonely they could die.
Your hour of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by the Mississippi Business Journal. Visit msbusinessjournal.com. Scott Coopwood, publisher and president.
And now, another hour of the talk that keeps Mississippi talking. Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Begin your transition now.
Now on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's hour 2 of Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. It's a Monday, a short show. Ricky Matthews, Super Talk Outdoors, coming up at 12:05. We were talking about this idea gaining traction of transitioning to a 4-day school week. So, yeah, and for the reasons you cited, cost, that being one of them. You're just operating the schools 4 days a week instead of 5. Longer hours, but still, though, that's not quite the same of opening up for business for a whole day, additional day during the week. So this is interesting, but...
Yeah, according to researchers at Oregon State University, that number of 2,100 schools in 26 states using a 4-day schedule was as of the 2024-2025 school year. And that's up about 500 schools in 24 states over the previous 6 years.
I'm
if you
just
go back
reading
to before
here.
COVID, it was about 1,600 schools in less than half the states. Now it's 2,100 schools in just over half the states.
Okay, Missouri reports they have 200. And Texas, 500. I had no idea. 500 schools in the state of Texas are operating on a 4-day school week. Transportation costs, of course, a big budget line item to operate a school. And when you're only running buses 4 days a week as opposed to 5, you're just using another hour or spending another hour, but that's a fixed cost for those 4 days. It doesn't change. What you're eliminating is the 5th day. That makes total sense. And there are also schools that have transitioned to a 4-day school week say that recruiting bus drivers and teachers is easier, that they're finding that to be a competitive advantage versus districts that have the traditional 5-day week. Huh.
To put the numbers in perspective, there are nearly 100,000 public schools in roughly 13,000 school districts across the nation.
Bunch of schools. So I'm looking at a statement from an individual with an organization known as Excel in Ed. That's all one word. Excel, followed by the word I-N, followed by capital E-D. Excel in Ed. The vice president of policy says there's little or no evidence of significant cost savings or academic improvement in most of these districts. No schools or districts should be doing this. Now, I'm not sure what the aversion is there or the objection is by that organization. I'm not familiar with its mission.
From what I can find, the only thing that would make sense as far as that perspective is because you usually have one of two types of schools that are going to the 4-day week, either really small schools, where the savings are going to be minimal due to the student population size, and rural schools, where when you get into the transportation cost, if you're having to bring kids in from a larger rural area, cutting it down to 4 days would be some savings. But rural schools are also usually smaller schools. So you go back to the point of, well, the smaller schools aren't saving as much because smaller numbers.
Okay. Well, that makes sense. I don't know. I'm just curious if there's an interest in transitioning to the 4-day week here in Mississippi. And we've had a couple people weigh in on that. Quite quite interesting, for sure. We'll see if maybe our legislature takes any action with respect to this or school districts. And I'm not sure, Rhino, under our law, can a school district transition to a 4-day calendar, 4-day schedule without some sort of legislative change? Not sure. I don't know if we have statute that says, hey, schools are 5 days a week. I know that we have many that...
I think they would have to apply for a waiver through the Department of Ed.
Okay. Well, that makes sense. Well, what about the year-round versus the traditional calendar? Same deal, right? I think that's the same thing, that a district, but that decision's made at the district level. I know the lieutenant governor has wanted to institute that statewide. He said that before. He'd like to see the entire state transition, convert to a year-round calendar. And I've heard those that are on it, in general, seem to be happy with it. I haven't heard too many objections to it. It seems like it gets more favorable reviews than unfavorable reviews.
I'm trying to find official documentation because all I'm seeing is info from certain websites and blogs, but it looks like the criteria that you would have to meet in order to apply for the waiver in Mississippi would be the district has to achieve an overall school grade of A under the accountability model.
Okay.
The district must meet a minimum teacher salary requirement of $45,000 per year. The district must provide free enrichment classes on designated off days and must offer transportation services for students who prefer or need to attend on a traditional 5-day schedule.
Okay. So that's actually...
That would take into account the conversation we're having on the C-Spire text line with people saying, hey, that would be cool for the students, but the parents that have to deal with child care would be up a creek. Looks like the schools would still have to offer enrichment classes, like a study hall kind of system, for students that would have to or need to show up on that 5th day.
Okay. Well,
which is likely why you're seeing some pushback on the notion that it's better for teacher and bus driver and administration as far as recruiting and retention.
Yeah.
If you still have a portion of that population still having to work on the 5th day.
Makes total sense. So while we're kind of on that subject here in the state of Mississippi, sort of related, I did catch a report that indicates that Mississippi is not a good place to have a baby. In fact, according to Wallet Hub, Mississippi is the worst place in America to have a baby. And here's what they use to develop these rankings, where we're overall ranked 51st, 50 states plus D.C., 26th in hospital cesarean delivery charges, 26th in hospital conventional delivery charges, 51st in infant mortality rate. I know this is something State Health Officer Dan Edney talks about every time he's on the program. 51st rate of low birth weight, 47th midwives and OB-GYNs per capita. Something else, that's certainly always in the news in Mississippi is just a shortage of these healthcare professionals. 48th pediatricians and family medicine physicians per capita, and 43rd on parental leave policy score. That, according to Wallet Hub, I do read those Wallet Hub surveys on a regular basis. They land in my inbox as a subscriber virtually every day. There's something, and of course, the emails are geared for the residents of the recipient, and so the headline: Mississippi's 2026 worst state to have a baby, according to Wallet Hub. That's what they say. But there are other things that come out that are very favorable to Mississippi, like cities where people spend the most and least on clothes. So, and other surveys that deal with just the cost of living. I've also been pleasantly surprised that we're better credit managers than lots of the states are. We seem to have less debt as a percentage of income and assets, and less delinquency. We're kind of in the middle there. So, positive aspect, but this was rather jarring to learn that according to Wallet Hub, for what that's worth, they see Mississippi as being the worst state in America to have a baby based on all those factors that we just shared with you. So, something that I know that we got to work on, got to keep on working on, for sure. We got some political races that are fairly pivotal that are on the horizon, especially with this rise in popularity of Democrat socialism. But the Midwest is on the clock, if you will, with respect to this. We got a crazy person running for governor of the state of Wisconsin, and we got an interesting U.S. Senate race in Michigan. So the Midwest, back-to-back August primaries, will test these battleground states as far as Democrat priorities. A little bit about that on the other side of the break. Coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
Hello, my name is
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Let's do this.
On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Let's go.
So we're getting some text on the C Spire text line. Folks are talking about Palantir. I was talking about that earlier because they're announcing earnings after the bell. A data analytics company. And folks are expressing concerns because it was co-founded by, and I think he still serves as chairman of the board, Peter Thiel. He also, of course, really made his fortune when he founded PayPal. PayPal, 1998, amazingly. But he was an early backer of lots of AI companies. He put a lot of his capital to work. He also heavily involved in Facebook and social media companies. He's just a big financier of Silicon Valley's history. Also backed President Trump before it was safe. He bankrolled J.D. Vance's Senate seat when Vance was really a long shot, our vice president in the state of Ohio. And he's been also a backer of some of the climate change stuff. So he's got kind of an interesting, diverse advocacy history, I would say.
Well, the other thing you got to remember about Palantir is that's a company that's been around for 20-plus years doing basically the same thing they're doing now, data analytics.
Yeah.
Like their data analytics were, I don't know that they were a key factor, but they were a contributing factor to finding Osama bin Laden.
That's exactly right.
They've been around for a minute.
And heavily used, as you know, by the United States Department of War. Integrally involved in the Iran operations, as well as the Venezuela situation where this country's military essentially went in and kind of took over the country and seized control away from the dictator, turned it over to the people and got out. That was all orchestrated by Palantir technology. And it is a war-fighting asset that this country has. It's pretty critical. to our Department of War's strategy and its arsenal of weaponry. And speaking of which, we've talked before in this country, on this show, I should say, about the concerns across the country of cyber attacks. And we have, especially on our critical infrastructure, electrical infrastructure and water supply. And there are more concerning reports about the latter, that there have been some hacks on our water supply systems in Michigan and Minnesota. There's some 7 states that report they have experienced cyber attacks that are aimed at disrupting our water supply across the nation. That's why it's critical we maintain technical superiority in these various technologies, especially with respect to AI. And I know a lot of people have concerns about AI going rogue and imposing harm on society by going rogue. But the truth is, the only way to combat rogue AI is with AI. There's no other solution to that. And so if we just say, okay, we got to stop that, well then it's kind of like gun control. Oh yeah, we're going to implement gun control. So the end result is the honest people don't have guns, but only the crooks do. And then they go use it against the honest people. That's sort of similar. It's really more than sort of similar. It's exactly what the risk is with respect to AI and quantum computing. If we just, that's what kind of fascinates me about these moratoriums. What does that mean? What are we going to do? Conduct government studies? Oh, how well do those work out? Let's go study it for a year. And do what? You don't come out with any more knowledge at the end of that year than you had before. And by the time it's changed so much during that year, everything you did is worthless, of zero value. All your findings. That's dumb. Meanwhile, what are the bad guys doing? Beefing up their capabilities. And that's exactly what's happening here. And this is concerning, that nothing at this point shows that our water supply has been altered or made unsafe to drink. But there are concerns, especially in Minnesota, which first publicly reported these attacks, and now Michigan. They both say, yeah, our systems are being targeted by foreign actors who are unleashing cyber attacks on these critical systems in our country, and specifically with respect to water recently. And that's definitely something we should be concerned about. So before we went to break, I was talking about these back-to-back August primaries that are going to test the Democrats' priorities. We got voters in Michigan going to the polls tomorrow, and a week from tomorrow in Wisconsin. So on the ballot tomorrow, you've got a Senate primary, and voters will pick between the former Wayne County Health Director Abdul El Said and Representative Haley Stevens, a Democrat from Michigan. And the winner will face off against Representative Mike Rogers, a Republican from Michigan, already has secured the nomination. This is for the seat that's vacated by Senator Gary Peters, a Democrat, who announced his retirement earlier in the year. So this El Said guy is a hardcore Democrat socialist nutcase. And looks like he's likely to win the nomination based on polls. And then in nearby Wisconsin, wow, this one's really something. There's a significant field of Democrat candidates, but the polling shows that Representative Francesca Hong of Madison, a self-described, quote, proud Democratic socialist, is going to face off Representative Tom Tiffany, a Republican for Wisconsin, for the state's governor's office. That is coming up next Tuesday. Now, Bernie Sanders, no shock, has endorsed El Said. He told NBC's Meet the Press yesterday that the Michigan race was a test of whether a candidate fighting for working people can take on tens and tens of millions of dollars of AIPAC money, special interest money, referring to spending by the American Israel Public Affairs Committee and allied groups against El Said. Sanders said the polling looks good, but polls don't win elections. People do. Rhino, I listened to the entire hour-plus podcast with this Francesca Hong, the Democrat socialist candidate for governor, with communist Hassan Piker. She was on the show last week, maybe the week before. Wasn't too long ago. His show. Fascinating listening to her dribble, honestly, for an hour and 20 minutes. And I guess I was intrigued because every time she'd say something crazy, I would think, it can't get crazier, and then it would get crazier. But her viewpoints, her beliefs, not sure I can get to it today, but I'll send it to you and tee it up for tomorrow. He goes through kind of a rapid fire, Piker does, with her, of questions. And she's just, it's do you support defunding the police and abolition of ICE? And just goes down the list, right? It's all the crazy stuff you would expect from a Democrat socialist, including nationalization or government control and ownership of certain businesses. Now, that's pure socialism. That dips into communist territory because, once again, the big distinction is private property between socialism, communism. And when you start taking over private businesses, seizing control of them, I put that in the communist category, honestly.
Well, you got to remember, Piker's the one that traveled to Cuba and stayed at the hotel that funds the communists in Cuba, and now he's under investigation by the feds.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he's the one that they went down there to Cuba and set up a concert that killed the power grid and wound up people dying in the hospital.
Wow. We're coming right back. We've got half an hour of middays remaining.
Bring it on. Middays with Gerard Gibert. It is on SuperTalk Mississippi.
We're back with you in the Element Wealth studio. We'll get to the tickets here in a minute. Jason in Starkville expresses concerns about Palantir and its use for surveillance. That seems to be a hot topic these days. Lots of folks concerned about surveillance. But I guess the question is, where do we draw the line? Because it is true, law enforcement uses a variety of sophisticated technology tools, including Palantir, to protect the public, to solve crimes. Where do we draw the line? Should we ban law enforcement from using the internet, for example? Because everybody's got a digital footprint. Who doesn't?
The guy that took shots at Trump.
That's true. That's true. But that also complicated that situation from a law enforcement investigatory perspective. I'm simply saying that it feels to me like there are a lot of people that express concerns about government invading their privacy, yet they put their whole lives on the internet. Like, well, stop putting everything out there, because that's what they're doing. They're simply using powerful tools to research you through your digital footprint. Who doesn't do that? And you put all your stuff out there, and then you wonder how they know about it. So I get it. I have kind of mixed feelings about this. I don't want big brother government knowing everything I do, but on the other hand, if these tools could enhance law enforcement and protect society, because the bad guys are using them big time to impose harm on society. And if we just shut all that down, well, where do we draw the line? No more binoculars, for example. We just can't use lights anymore. All of those are, you could argue, are an invasion of privacy. I think it rises to a different level when it's digital. People get concerned about that, but stop putting all your stuff out there. Don't share every intimate detail. Don't take pictures of your meal and put it out there, right? Hey, you're opening the door. You're inviting. And it's not just government, it's everybody out there. We're conditioned to this. As humans, you like the attention. That's what it's all about. So, I mean, using cell phones, text messages, apps, all the above is creating your digital footprint. And when there's crime involved, if those tools could be used to scour a suspect's digital footprint, in fact, I would say, Rhino, that there's some dereliction in the fact that with some of these crazy transgender shootings, that all the warning signs were there because of their social media and their internet presence, but the authorities or management or folks that they reported to, employers, like in schools and so forth, elected not to take action. And people died as a result of it. But they were telling you they were going to do this, and you ignored it. So it's a fine line. I get it. I was talking earlier about these two races that are sort of testing the Democrats' priorities. Listen to this quick, short Q&A rapid fire from Hassan Piker, the communist podcaster, and Francesca Hong, the Democrat socialist candidate for governor of Wisconsin.
Now we're going to do rapid fire. Super easy, super simple. Rapid fire. Do you support repealing Act 10?
Yes.
Universal child care?
Yes.
Free school meals?
Yes.
Guaranteed paid leave?
Yes.
Abolishing ICE?
Yes.
A 1-year data center moratorium?
Yes.
Breaking up Big Ag?
Yes.
Public grocery stores?
Yes.
Right to repair?
Yes.
Legalizing cannabis?
Yes.
Overturning Citizens United?
Yes.
A workers' bill of rights?
Yes.
A free Palestine?
Yes.
A Scott Walker statue that people can go to that are made by local artisans and craftsmen that people can slap up if they want to?
Tentatively, yes.
There you go. Incredible.
So she's only tentatively yes on the statue of the former governor.
Yeah.
So people can slap it around.
And there's a little context. He talked about that earlier in the show, about this idea he had, and he wanted to get her take of it. He believes that the former Republican Governor Scott Walker ruined Wisconsin. He believes that. And that Act 10, by the way, that's one of the things that Walker did. I don't know if you guys remember, but he was responsible for implementing right to work in Wisconsin, which means that if you go to work for a company that has a union, you're not required by law to join the union. You have a choice. He said it was breaking the state. The unions of state government employees were breaking the state. They were broke. Wisconsin was upside down. And this Act 10, by the way, that was passed in 2011 when he was the governor. And it limited public sector collective bargaining, especially with respect to the government. That's really where it came from. And so she wants to put that back in. Sure. So you can raise everybody's taxes is what you're going to do to pay for it. So Jason Starkville says, I'm just giving you crap. I'm invested in Palantir. Appreciate that, Jason. No, you're not giving me crap. I get it. We're having a reasonable, respectful discussion, and I have concerns about – I don't trust government. If you could trust government, I'd say this would be somewhat of a non-issue. But, there's a fine line between government using tools that could keep us safe, make our streets, our lives better, and invading our privacy. This is a problem that's existed since the country was founded. It's just now we have a different set of tools that are way more powerful. I'm simply making the point that we're all out there happily sharing our lives. Thomas, you're talking here, are we good with the surveillance state? You share your most intimate details on this tax line about your financial situation. I can tell the whole state of Mississippi what your balance sheet looks like virtually. But then you get mad because people are surveilling. No, I'm not saying that at all. And you say there's a difference between posting online and being profiled by flock cameras. No, you're missing the point here. I'm simply saying is that your digital footprint is providing information to these tools that you object to. You're giving it the information willfully, wittingly. Disconnect if you don't want that. And I know people get upset about the scanning of the license plates, but Rhino, there are hundreds and hundreds of situations where bad people have been caught because of that. Like child kidnappers, rapists, molesters. Yeah, we found them 3 states over. You know exactly what I'm talking about. So is that not a good thing? And how much is that deterring? So I understand, again, it's this very fine line, and we could certainly unplug all that stuff.
Well, there's generally 2 types of people that are against Palantir and Flock and data centers and AI and all that. You have one group of people, the neo-Luddites, that are upset that they have emojis available to them on their text messaging app because they hate emojis. Because they had to get drug into the future of email in 2014 or something like that.
Yeah.
They're never going to like anything newer than a rotary telephone.
That's true.
So there's no convincing them, and their understanding of the technology is so limited that the conversation is going to go nowhere.
Right.
The other people that are vehemently against Palantir and data centers and AI and surveillance and Flock and all this are the ones that are being hypocritical because of what you're saying, where they will literally put anything and everything about their life on the Internet and then get upset when the Internet uses that to its advantage.
Totally true. And Thomas says, you're good with Palantir having your calls and texts because I promise you they have it all. I am, Thomas. I am. I'm perfectly fine with that. I got nothing to hide. How about you? So, but here's the thing. Is anybody forcing you to use this device here? I'm holding up my phone. You don't have to use it. Put it down. By the way, don't you work for a company that's in the telecommunications business? Your company is the one that's providing all that information. If you truly believed in all this, quit your job and go do something else today. We're coming right back in the Element Well studio. We got Toto tickets to give away.
Up of Mississippi.
Are we going to do this?
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Keep rolling. 3, 2, 1.
On SuperTalk Mississippi.
We're back with you in the Element Well studio. Rhino, you want to give away some tickets?
Yeah, we got the legendary rock band Toto coming to the Brandon Amphitheater on August 5th. That's just a couple days away. Toto's going to be joined by Christopher Cross and the Romantics. And if you want to go to the show, you can get your tickets now at Ticketmaster.com. But we're giving you a chance to win a pair of tickets at the last minute to see Toto. All you got to do is be the 18th person to text in to the C Spire text line. That's 601-879-4395. Be the 18th person to text in, hold the line, and you'll win a pair of tickets to see Toto on August 5th at the Brandon Amphitheater.
Hold the line. Great tune. No doubt about it. So, on the C Spire text line, what's the difference in Democrat socialism and Republican socialism? Well, I would say nothing. If it... what's the old saying goes? If it walks, acts, quacks like a duck, it's a duck. And so I think where there's debate, Rhino, is how to define socialism. Because what you typically get out of those on the left who are strong advocates of socialism is they'll always respond with, well, I guess then that law enforcement is socialism. Roads and bridges are socialism. I think that's wrong and a weak response. In fact, while we're talking right here on the screen, the Business Channel just had a report, the rise of socialism in the United States. So there's confusion, in my view, as to exactly what constitutes socialism. And when... in general, the definition is government or some central authority is determining the means and volume of the production of goods and services. And so when the government steps in and takes control of some function in the private sector or the production of goods and services, and they determine, again, how much is going to be made, who's going to be working to produce those goods and services, and at what price they're going to be sold, and what the workers are going to be paid. That's socialism. Socialized medicine, Rhino, in the UK. It is truly socialized medicine because the medical community works for the government. The healthcare institutions are owned and operated by the government. Now, there's a private healthcare community as well, but only the wealthy people who can afford that have access to it. It's not against UK law to have side by side a private healthcare industry, but in general, you pay through payroll taxes to be a member and to participate in and have access to the government-provided healthcare. That's the way that works. And the doctors, the nurses, they're employees of the government. That's socialized medicine. Now, you could certainly look at things like the Affordable Care Act and the ACA exchanges, which are marketplaces for private health insurance. And some people would refer to that as a lean into socialized medicine. But here's the problem I found in the past is if you went to the person on the street and said, hey, do you think that insurance companies, there should be a limit to the out-of-pocket expenses that you bear as an insured, that the insurance company should cap that? Most people would say, yeah. Well, that came out of the Affordable Care Act. That's socialized medicine. And then if you asked, well, do you think that insurance companies should be required to pay out a certain amount of their premium revenue in the form of claims? That's really government control of a private industry. That's exactly what we have. Came out of the Affordable Care Act. Should we have lifetime limits or annual limits on the amount an insurance company can pay for health care claims? Many people would say no. Affordable Care Act did that. Socialized medicine to some extent. So I also had someone on the C Spire text line that said that the license plate readers helped find my wife's family find their uncle who had left the nursing home in Tennessee. They found him in Alabama. He had suffered from dementia. Bill says AI will ensure nothing will be hidden, including passwords. Oh, wow. The government doesn't use any more technology than Visa, MasterCard, or American Express. It's a good point. That's Robert in Brandon. Jack in Jacktown says, if you ain't doing nothing, they ain't seeing nothing. Y'all give Thomas way too much attention and airtime. I disagree, Trey and Vaden. If you've been paying attention, we've hardly given him any in the last few months. This just has to happen to be one day where we did. So I get that from prior times, and that's fine. We're just playing around with Thomas. And I disagree with what you said there, by the way, Thomas. And Paul in Meridian, he sent us a piece. Paul has always been very much against high CEO pay, but what you didn't include, Paul, what about athletes and the people that work to support the professional athletics industry? Out of here today, back tomorrow. Stay safe and God bless.
A SuperTalk Mississippi media production.